Michelle, what would it cost in the servicing of the debt? How much would it add to that 48 billion figure? McDonald, we are now at the stage where interest rates are so low that ensuring that you borrow in that initial phase... Michelle, interest rates are going up. McDonald, yes, but they're still at historic lows, and it's just not me like saying this. David Javid said 2 weeks ago, now the interest rates are so low, we should be borrowing to invest. Michelle, but we all know that you would borrow to invest. The question I have asked you a couple of times now is, how much would it add to the servicing costs every year? McDonald, it's minimal because the interest rate is so low. Michelle, what is minimal? McDonald, minimal, we are literally talking about it paying for itself. Michelle, are you talking about a minimal increase? McDonald, we're talking about it paying for itself, a one-to-one multiplier. When you invest, what you do is you grow the economy, and as a result of that, you cover your costs. Michelle, over the long term, but how much above £48 million will we pay to service our debt next year? McDonald, it's absolutely minimal because it would be returned rapidly to you. But what is the figure? McDonald, I'm telling you, it pays for itself. You have also said it's minimal. I'm wondering what the figure is. Do you know? McDonald, and this is final, it pays for itself. It pays for itself.
Yeah, I'm afraid this is not the only time this has happened with John McDonnell in the last few weeks. He's had a go at everybody on because he will not answer the questions because he hasn't got any answers. And he's really getting grotty with some of the reporters.
Sometimes he has the answers, but they're unpalatable.
Yeah.
And particularly when it comes to explaining just how the economy would work under the extremes of Labour's left wing, is a joy to behold. I think.
Do you think he really knows how the economy works?
You know, I mean, it's clear from his responses he doesn't know, and he either doesn't know or he's afraid to say.
Yeah, but he's really having a go at journalists who are asking him questions. He's getting like Trump. He doesn't want to deal with the press, you know. And he goes on these shows and he refuses to answer the questions. And then he said, you know, you're being rude. You're having a go at me, you know, and all this sort of stuff.
Which, you know, it's you can
He's
understand.
Lacking. The man is lacking.
You know, you go on the attack, don't you, when you try to defend the undefensible?
Yeah, but in his point, it doesn't come across very well, does it?
No. And as somebody who's supposed to be the leader of the opposition's financial team, him not having those sort of figures at his disposal, it doesn't bode well for the people that are supporting him, because when you go into a radio interview as a politician, you're given a crib sheet of important information that's relevant. That should have been, he should have a financial pack that he could say, I'm sorry, I can't remember that off the top of my head, but give me a moment, here we are.
Yeah.
There it is. But no, he bluffs it, and you know, there's a great deal of BS, I think, is the appropriate acronym.
Don't you think the reason they're doing that is because the Labour type voters, the younger elements, and all this sort of, you know, they're not interested in something. They don't understand somebody saying, you know, well, it actually is going to cost another £12 billion a year for 10 years and all this sort of thing. All they're interested in hearing is the simplicity of it. You know, that you don't have to worry about it because it pays for itself. You know,
yeah. Always borrowing money that pays for itself is
wonderful, isn't it?
Well, you know, it can happen. I mean, I do believe you can invest and see a payback on that investment. And that's great, but you've got to explain it in a little bit more detail. And you're quite right, Mike. These are sound bites designed to appeal to particularly uneducated or poorly educated young people, because they can then jump onto a bandwagon, and the cult of Corbyn is strengthened by it, and it's going from strength to strength. In all fairness, I mean, he is Obi-Wan Kenobi, isn't he? Just, you know, he sits up there and he talks these platitudes.
Talks down to people.
It does indeed, but you know, he will probably be our next Prime Minister.
Yeah, I'm afraid to say, yeah, it looks that way, doesn't it?
And fair enough. I mean, that's the political system. I mean, anybody can stand up there and do it. He's done it. I think some of the tactics he's used and some of the left-wing extremist ways of dealing with opposition is highly inappropriate. But nevertheless, that's the rough and tumble world we live in.
Yeah, when you talk about borrowing money, I mean, have you seen this series on Trump? I mean, talking about borrowing money, he was $8 billion. I think it was $8 billion or something like that. It was several $billion dollars in debt, and he took loads of companies out because he didn't pay anybody.
Yeah.
And this guy's, president, the most powerful man in the world, and he's got this track record. I think it's appalling. We talk about our people looking at porn allegedly. What about that?
Well, I think everybody is aware of Trump's track record to date. If they're not, they're blind.
Yeah, but
deaf.
You still could have asked this question. How on earth did he ever get elected?
Well, because he managed to persuade, 50% of the American population that he was the right man for the job. And I suspect a great many of them genuinely believe that, having a sort of a businessman at the helm would be a good thing for America. That's what they genuinely believe.
Yeah, but a bankrupt businessman.
It's very successful, mate.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. If you look at his history, he's had some really, bad times.
Yeah,
it's all been, his success has been built on other people's money, isn't it?
Yes, no. Yes, there is an element of that, but I don't think that you've had just the simple fact that you've had a failure in the business world disqualifies you from anything in the future.
I wouldn't say it's a failure.
I think having a failure is a bit of a qualification, actually.
Well, it is, but not to the extent he has. I mean, you've been talking about billions of dollars. I mean, he's just overstretched himself. He's reckless is the word they used, actually.
Well, yes, there is an element of that, and I can't argue with it.
It was more than an element.
I don't like Donald Trump very much at all, and I can't believe
people doing this. Country,
the idea of having him come over on a official tour and getting our Queen to be polite to him is very frustrating,
isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, the man is just the worst president I think America has ever had. And certainly
they've had some bad ones, haven't they?
I mean, they've had some, but then we've had some dodgy prime ministers as well. So it's what goes around comes around. What I'm really concerned about more than anything else is the fact that the polls are saying that he might get a second term. What's that all about?
Really, I've not heard that.
Yeah, well, it's what seems to be happening.
Well, hey.
So, have you actually spoke to any Americans, Bob?
Yes.
And what do they say? What do your American friends say?
All the ones I know don't like him.
Yes.
This is the interesting thing. They think he's terrible. He's dangerous for the country. He seems to be trying to make it a dictatorship as well, doesn't he? I mean, what's going to happen now? Now these missiles can hit America from North Korea.
The Korean rhetoric is going up day by day, isn't it? It's getting
looking very nasty, isn't it?
But it's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, a military intervention in Korea is just going to cause so many millions of innocent people being, killed. It will happen. I mean, the amount of hardware that's pointing at South Korea from North Korea is phenomenal.
The trouble is it's going to escalate, isn't it? Because China are going to take his
Did I
side.
hear a figure of something like 200,000 shells will fall within 1 hour? That basically means Seoul is obliterated.
Seoul's in South Korea.
She sells
It would be
from
the North Korean border. They've got so many artillery pieces that are trained on Seoul that 200,000 shells will fall within 1 hour on Seoul. That means Seoul will be obliterated and all the people in it. That's just an enormous amount of firepower. And with the best will in the world and all the cruise missiles you like, you're not going to stop that.
No, you see, the same thing is, I think this bloke Kim Jong is likely to do it.
Yeah.
Don't you? Mike, hello, Mike. Are you here today? I haven't heard much from you today.
No. I'm fascinated by these this discussion that's actually going on at the moment here on CRMK on a Saturday morning with me, Mike Barry,
and me, Bob Bluffield,
and me, Alan Mallyon.
Together, of course, we are
the grumpy old men.
Fuck off.
She's a long-legged woman dressed in black, dressed in black. black, black, black. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Yeah, she knows how to move, how to rock, how to rock, how to rock, how to rock, rock, rock. Yeah, she knows how to move, how to rock, how to rock, how to rock, how to rock, rock, rock. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Woo! Then she's gonna like a flash in the night. In the night, in the night, in the night, night. Yeah, she's gonna like a flash in the night. In the night, in the night, in the night, night. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time, every time, every time, every time, every time, every time. Woo! She's a long-legged woman dressed in black, dressed in black, dressed in black, dressed in black, black, black. She's a long-legged woman dressed in black, dressed in black, dressed in black, dressed in black, black, black. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make a move, she tell me no. Every time I make
A long-legged woman dressed in black.
Wow, who's
Mungo Jerry.
Mungo Jerry. Okay.
Yes, there we go. Right, you're listening to CRMK on a Saturday morning with the Grumpy Old Men, and say if you'd like to join in the show this morning, we would be delighted to hear your comments. 07790 385 385. That's 07790 385 385, or mike@crmk.co.uk.
Or the Grumpy Old Men and Women Facebook page. I've just found out who I'm talking about now. When I was talking about the guy that submitted to killing the mother and the daughter with the hammer, Belfield is the guy who killed Millie Dowler, who's in prison for killing Millie Dowler. Mm-hmm. He's the one that's admitted that he did this crime, and he claims also he's done a lot of others, and the copper that was in charge of the investigation thinks that could be the case. So there was an interesting documentary on BBC last night about this, but this is in the news, so watch this space, because I think there's going to be a retrial.
Yeah, well, excuse me, yeah, it could be. And I'm talking about trials and things like that. There's a terrorist suspect who's linked to Islamic State. He's wasted thousands of pounds of taxpayers' money. Guess why? He's asked a judge to lift the ban on a visit to McDonald's. He's a hate preacher, a close associate of the London Bridge attacker Kiran Butt, said strict curbs on his movements meant he couldn't buy his children Happy Meals. The Muslim fanatic known as LF was eager to take them to McDonald's even though it doesn't serve halal meat. He went to court claiming the ban hampers his family life. And one of the UK's most dangerous extremists, he was a colleague of the firebrand cleric Ajam Chowdhury. Was convicted in August last year of inspiring British Muslims to carry out terror attacks. And British spies say that LF was a leading figure in the now banned terror group.
So it's called LF, is it?
Yeah, well,
figure.
That's his name.
Yeah.
Al-Majid Haroon, which has links to 15 terror plots, including the 7/7 attacks.
So he's not inside? He's on house arrest, is he?
Yes, yeah.
Why? I must ask.
Mrs. Justice Elizabeth Lang reviewed the restrictions at a High Court hearing in London in July, where she heard evidence from a member of MI5. In a ruling published yesterday, She said he's not allowed to go into shops or cafes with internet access, such as Debenhams or even McDonald's. One of his children loves Happy Meals, so this is an issue, as he will not be able to give